Why would a state nicknamed the Evergreen State possess desolate lands that resemble the surface of Mars? Washington is not just about coffee and technology, but it also conceals a legacy of atomic energy and the deep scars from the most catastrophic floods in human history. Can you believe it? Washington is often framed within postcards of Seattle's gray skies or dry tech giants. But in reality, this is a land with the most misunderstood geography in America, a place where nature has performed a spectacular trick on human perception. Why does a state dubbed the Evergreen State possess barren, scorched basalt surfaces that look no different from Martian terrain? And why can geographical boundaries that seem illogical, drawn with indifferent rulers on white paper, shift the economic and military destiny of a superpower? Welcome back to Planet Expedition. Today, we will not look for superficial beauties, but rather dive deep into the thick fog to decode the paradoxes hiding in the far northwest corner of the nation. To truly understand the stature of Washington, do not just look at the lifeless lines on a map, but look at the massive value it is quietly creating for the world. With an area of about 71,000 square miles, Washington ranks only 18th in the United States, but its economic power is in the super heavyweight class, a heavyweight contender dominating how we live, eat, and think every single day. This is home to over 7.8 million people with an average income level that any nation would envy. It is not hard to see why this is the headquarters for empires reshaping the flow of humanity, from Amazon changing how we shop, to Microsoft redefining work, and Starbucks turning coffee into a global cultural phenomenon. But behind the flashy GDP figures and glass skyscrapers lies a geographical polarization that is breathtakingly harsh. Washington is like an extreme two-sided coin, a wild script that nature has arranged. Everything is separated by the majestic Cascade Range, a giant of stone and eternal snow. If the West is the vibrant tech heart, where Pacific moisture nurtures the dampest temperate rainforests in North America, then the East is a completely different world. It is the core of silent plateaus, where the dominant hue is not green but the yellow-brown of scorched grass and the harshness of a semi-desert as dry as parts of the South. This separation is not just about climate or scenery, it is a frontier of mindset and lifestyle, creating two parallel worlds sharing a single name on the map. Before we step through the space gate on the Cascades to explore the deepest secrets, I have a small question for you to ponder. In your opinion, what best represents the true power of the state of Washington? Option A, the billion-dollar tech empires like Amazon and Microsoft dominating the global flow of information. Option B, the will to survive and the absolute adaptation of humans on a terrain brutally carved by nature. Leave a comment with your answer, A or B, right below. Planet Expedition really wants to know your perspective on the core value of this land of paradoxes. To understand why Washington wears the cloak of the Evergreen State, we must move away from dry economic figures to enter a more spiritual journey, where Pacific moisture begins its solitary trek through the old-growth forests of the West. The first stop must be the Olympic Peninsula, a natural fortress in the far northwest where time seems to have stood still for millennia. This is not just a national park, but a massive oxygen laboratory, a living museum of the finest elements nature has left on this land. Here, life does not exist superficially, it takes deep root in the earth, reaches high into the sky, and weaves through every thick drop of fog. You will find yourself overwhelmed by giants like Douglas firs or western red cedars, beings that have stood firm through thousands of years of history, rising as high as a 30-story building with rugged trunks full of the scars of time. The heart of this peninsula is the Hoh rainforest, a mysterious land where the concept of green is redefined in the most extreme way. With record rainfall every year, every corner of the forest is invaded by thick moss, covering everything from tree trunks to the highest leaves, creating velvet green curtains hanging down like something out of a fantasy film. But the true value of the Hoh rainforest lies not just in the visual, but in the sound. In a modern world full of noise from machinery and information, this is one of the rare places on the planet where silence is preserved like a national treasure. At the iconic spot named 1 square inch of silence, the thick moss and vegetation act as natural acoustic panels, absorbing all external noise. In that space, silence becomes tangible and thick to the point where you can hear your own heartbeat or the gentle breath of the great wilderness. It is a commanding silence, forcing humans to face themselves. Standing beside that silence are the uncrowned kings of the plant world, the ancient Sitka spruces. These entities are engineering wonders of creation, possessing extraordinary adaptability. They stand tall right at the edge of the ocean, directly facing fierce storms and the salty sting of Pacific seawater. A Sitka spruce trunk with a diameter of up to 16 feet is not just a massive piece of wood, but a living diary preserving Earth's climatic memories for over 500 years. They drink massive amounts of water from endless rains, turning it into energy to protect the entire West Coast ecosystem from the destructive power of the sea. Their presence is a testament to a quiet but magnificent resilience. However, geography does not only shape the landscape, it also seeps into the very fiber and personality of the people living at the foot of the Cascades. A bitter paradox in Seattle is its reputation as the rainy city. People often whisper about a Seattle that is damp year-round, but geographical truth presents a shocking figure. The annual rainfall of this city is actually less than New York, Miami, or Houston. So why does the world still believe the myth? The answer lies in the style of rain. Instead of downpours that drench and then clear under bright sun, Seattle chooses a psychological torture of persistent thin mists, nameless drizzles, and a gray sky lasting month after month. It doesn't soak you instantly, but it seeps into the soul, creating a cramped feeling as if the sky is always pressing a blurry weight onto your head. That gloomy atmosphere, lacking sunlight for long periods, has molded a famous social phenomenon called the Seattle freeze. It is a characteristic coldness of the people in western Washington. Geography has caused the people here to withdraw, becoming more introverted and less social compared to the typical American openness. They are not rude, but they maintain a certain distance, a reserve like the rainforests themselves, shrouded in mist year-round. The Starbucks coffee culture flourished here perhaps for that reason. People need a warm space, a hot drink to warm the soul during long days facing the bleakness of nature. Western Washington thus appears as a sad but beautiful sonata, where the intense life of nature contrasts with the silence of people, all coexisting under the eternal cover of gray clouds from the ocean. But just as you get used to the cold mist and the absolute silence of the western rainforests, a short journey over the Cascade Crest causes that entire reality to collapse, making way for a world of brutal and violent geological scars. Welcome to Eastern Washington, where nature does not use green sprouts to soothe, but uses the slashes of power to warn. Here lies a strange land called the Channeled Scablands, a landscape that, when viewed from above, makes it hard to believe you are still on Earth. It looks like a fragment of the Martian surface dropped onto this planet, with deep, dry canyons, vertical basalt cliffs eroded to the bone, and massive potholes leaving only a haunting silence. The secret behind this alien appearance was once one of the most heated debates in scientific history. In the 1920s, geologist J. Harlan Bretz, standing before these barren lands, made a shocking claim: the Scablands were not formed over millions of years of slow erosion as the geological dogma of the time believed, but were the result of a catastrophic flood beyond imagination. For nearly half a century, Bretz was considered a madman and mocked by the scientific community, because no one believed nature could change the map of an entire state in just a few days. But Bretz was right, and the story of his battle to protect the truth is as dramatic as the superflood he discovered. The answer lies about 15,000 years ago, at the end of the Ice Age. In Montana, a massive ice sheet blocked the Clark Fork River, creating an ice dam 2,000 feet high, holding back Lake Missoula, a massive sea containing the terrifying power of trillions of cubic feet of pressurized water. When this ice dam collapsed, it was not a leak, but a wall of water over 300 feet high rushing with incredible velocity. Imagine a flood with energy 10 times the total flow of all the world's rivers combined, uprooting rocks weighing dozens of tons, stripping away the topsoil, and carving deep into the hardest basalt bedrock as if the earth itself were being flayed. The most powerful evidence of that divine force is Dry Falls in central Washington. Today, standing before Dry Falls, you will only see dry horseshoe-shaped cliffs, but close your eyes and let your imagination travel back in time. You are standing before the largest waterfall to ever exist on the planet, over 3 miles wide and as high as a 40-story building, 4 times greater than Niagara Falls. At the peak of the Missoula flood, the massive wall of water crashed down here so violently that it created deep potholes dozens of feet deep at the base of the falls, where whirlpools carrying sand and rock drilled like diamond bits into the earth. Now, the water has dried, the roar has died, leaving only a silence that chills the spine, reminding us that Washington's geography was not drawn with a slow pencil over time, but was carved by the brutal slashes of natural destiny. Deeper into the heart of the East is the Grand Coulee, a steep-walled canyon 60 miles long, another massive scar created when the Columbia River was forced to change direction during the flood's fury. The cliffs here are not just stone, they are pages opening to a violent past where life was wiped out in an instant to make way for a new geological order. Eastern Washington is therefore not just an agricultural land or a simple desert, it is a museum of destruction and rebirth, where modern humans still walk on the traces of a superflood that completely changed the shape of North America. This fierce past created a solid foundation for the land's resilience, turning what was once brutally slashed by nature into the blue reservoirs and lush fields of today. The haunting silence on the eastern cliffs is not only a trace of a violent geological past, but also a veil covering strange stories of human error and great ambitions that forever changed the flow of history. Holding a map of Washington, you might sometimes gasp in surprise at the laziness or arrogance of 19th-century surveyors, who accidentally created hilarious anomalies right on the border. The most iconic is Point Roberts, a tiny piece of land sitting isolated below the 49th parallel. Due to an error by surveyors in 1846 who preferred sitting in offices drawing straight lines on paper rather than looking at the terrain, residents here fell into one of the world's most ironic situations. To reach the rest of their own state by land, they must pass through customs into Canada twice. Point Roberts is like an outcast child, a fascinating legal and geographical blind spot, proving that a careless stroke of a ruler can decide the fate of an entire community for hundreds of years. This geographical ambiguity did not stop at Rhodes but extended into the misty waters of the San Juan Islands, where a war nearly broke out between two world powers over a pig. In 1859, when the boundary between Britain and America in these waters was still a mess due to the existence of two parallel channels, a British pig wandered into an American farmer's potato patch and was shot. This minor incident escalated into a tense military standoff lasting 12 years, with warships and artillery ready to fire. Fortunately, this was the most humane war in history because no shots were fired at people, the only casualty was the unfortunate pig. After more than a decade of stalemate, realizing that fighting over a creature was absurd, both sides asked the German emperor to arbitrate, leading the San Juan Islands to officially become part of America in 1872. Deep within the heart of urban Seattle, geography also tells a story of resilience and the craziest hack in architectural history. After the Great Fire that leveled the city in 1889, instead of clearing the mud from the soggy lowlands, Seattleites made a wild decision. They built stone walls several feet high and raised the entire street level up one whole floor. This action accidentally turned the old ground floors into a dark underworld. For many years, businesses still operated below, using the faint light from frosted glass tiles on the new sidewalks, creating a network of decaying but charming mazes. Today, walking down the stairs into the underground city, you will find yourself walking among the brick streets of the 19th century, looking at old windows deep beneath the feet of skyscrapers, a Seattle that would rather bury itself to rise higher than surrender to adversity. And then, from the dark cellars of the past, Washington rose to become an irreplaceable arsenal when wood and steel began turning into massive iron birds. Taking advantage of seaports and cheap electricity from the rivers, Boeing built the largest aircraft manufacturing plants on the planet in western Seattle. It was the B-17 and B-29 flying fortresses rolled out from here that completely changed the course of the war in the Pacific during World War II. Washington evolved from a quiet timberland into a key defense industrial center, where human intelligence conquered space and distance. Here, geography was no longer a barrier but became a launchpad for this Northwest state to write its name into human history as a symbol of elite manufacturing power, where steel monsters were born to protect and reshape the free world. However, All these mechanical wonders and human resilience on the surface seem like an endless chase with the massive forces still quietly moving within Washington's earth and stone. The transition from flashy Boeing planes leads us to another haunting reality in the east, where the Hanford site once served as the epicenter of the atomic age in the Manhattan Project. Here, the American government took advantage of the absolute isolation of the desert and the massive water of the Columbia River to mold the soul of the atomic bomb dropped on Nagasaki. But the price of atomic power is a radioactive scar that has never healed. Millions of gallons of toxic waste are quietly leaking through ice age sediments, creating a silent geological battle the state faces every day to protect its lifeline river. Washington does not only fight the atomic ghosts it created itself, but also must learn to coexist with a massive geological pressure cooker sitting right on the Pacific Ring of Fire. Volcanoes like St. Helens or Rainier are not merely majestic landscapes, they are ticking time bombs with terrifying destructive power. When Mount St. Helens exploded in 1980, it wiped out hundreds of square miles of old-growth forest in seconds with volcanic mudflows called lahars that had the destructive force of liquid concrete. Yet, in that destruction lay a miraculous rebirth, as the deadly ash itself, after millions of years, becomes the most precious source of minerals, making this land one of the most fertile in America. To conquer the harshness and utilize that risky favor, humans created the Grand Coulee Dam, a concrete giant so great it could turn the fierce Columbia River to water millions of acres of desert, transforming land once stripped by the Missoula floods into a kingdom of apples and hops. From the floating bridges on Deep Lake Washington to sophisticated irrigation systems with sensors for every tree, Washington appears as an ultimate testament to the absolute control of human intelligence over extreme nature. Every apple shipped or every bit of power running through Amazon servers carries the breath of adaptation, where humans do not just live beside volcanoes or atomic sites, but turn those threats into a launch pad for a proud prosperity. Looking back at the entire picture of Washington, we realize that this is not just a state on a map, but a living entity molded from the most violent conflicts of creation. Washington teaches us that greatness often does not come from tranquility, but sprouts from the scars of floods, from the ash of volcanoes, and from the deeply human mistakes of people. A land can simultaneously carry the cold, gloomy veil of misty rainforests and possess the burning, harsh reality of basalt deserts. The parallel existence of those extremes has created an infinite power of adaptation, where humans do not choose to run from adversity but choose to build tech empires on mud and plant sweet orchards in the heart of dry deserts. Washington is the symbol of a spirit that never surrenders, a proof of turning threats into opportunities and turning extreme differences into a solid, unified block. Adversity is not a barrier, but a catalyst for great transformation. Just as the deadly volcanic ash eventually becomes fertile soil, or canyons devastated by floods become reservoirs feeding the entire land, the difficulties in your life are the raw materials to create a stronger version of yourself. Learn to accept the scars and imperfections in your own life. When facing a sudden change or a painful failure, instead of asking why this is happening to me, ask what can I build from these ruins. Practice flexible adaptation. When needed, be quiet and deep like the Olympic rainforest. When needed, be strong and decisive like the Columbia River. Lasting success does not come from finding a favorable environment, but from the ability to turn every harsh environment into your own advantage. Before we part ways, Planet Expedition really wants to hear your opinion. Between a green but somber beauty and a harsh but prosperous reality, which side does your soul feel more connected to? Please politely leave your perspective in the comments section. Every share from you is a huge inspiration to us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to support Planet Expedition in the journey of discovering the next shocking geographical truths. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you in the next adventure.